Hi everybody, welcome to the channel for new video. So this is not going to be a whole battle report like you used to, because maybe like you know, we shook on this one, meaning after deployment we agreed on a score together with Abrazus, which was on one side a bit disappointing because it was going to be a very exciting game against a top player to display on my channel, but at the same time you will understand why it wasn't a good matchup at all for me, and it was pretty clear after deployment what was going to happen in most cases, and I think neither the Polish team or us wanted to have the variance around this score, so wanted to basically secure a score that was for us seen as it was after the pairing already. But let's talk about it. I thought it's interesting enough to just talk about deployment in this one, because it's still interesting. There are still a couple of options that I could go with, and I think it's interesting to discuss the advantage or disadvantage of some of the options. I'm going to display first the two options that we did do during the game, and after that the third one that I came up with a bit later. So this was the list. Basically Abrazus playing a typical Highborn list that worked really well during this ETC, achieved a high number of points, but you see some of the things that you saw in most ETC lists, being a couple of mobile flying monster and character. You have then the commander on BSB, has the High Prince with the special spear within a unit of 27 citizen spear with a ban of speed. Then he has the 3 Guard Reapers, the 2 chariot, a unit of archer, and some Elven Weaver, and an additional piece of chaff. Basically, that's about it for his list. We played Capture the Flag and Counter Trust. I didn't didn't write down this spell selection. Doesn't matter a lot for what we're going to do in this video. Yeah, I think it was a typical Highborn list with a spear block on a secondary that most likely is going to be lost for me. So it's definitely a terrible matchup for me. I put it as a 5 in my metrics, so definitely something I didn't want at the pairing, but basically it's a choice that we made at the end of the pairing. I just told the guys who were in charge of the pairing in our team, do what you need to do, what's best for the team basically, and they ended up choosing to give me the Highborn match instead of the Beastard one, which was picked by my teammate Andy. So basically that's how we ended up paired, but definitely not, I didn't had I hope for this match, which was very negative for me. Deployment, I'm going to show you first what I did as a first ID. I voluntarily hide some of the stuff, not show you too much information about what we did. Then you can also try to think about it, about the deployment, the different solution during I'm talking. So basically it was Counter Trust on flags. I wandered for side, so I gave him an impassable. He decided to start to drop for first turn, which makes sense. Put a long line of fast cav, which after what I put a unit of dogs. He put, I think, the scoring cav here, which I replied with the giant here to try to push back this part of the map, which I could still push him back. After that, he put something like a Phoenix or Bolt Thrower maybe. And I put after that a Trident Dart, which I think was one of the mistakes that I did, playing Capture the Flag. I think I figured out it's always between the third drop on Counter Trust. For me, it's always between the Trident Dart and the Frost Mammoth, which is always kind of a nuance. It's always a hard choice to pick the one that's the best to show to your opponent. In this case, I went a bit counterintuitive by keeping the Frosty to remain flexible, but I think it would have been better to deploy the Frosty around the middle here behind the hill and still keep him waiting for the darts. But basically could have put just another one, would have then deployed for first turn. I don't know. That would have given me more option basically. I don't know if he would have probably waited a bit more and let me start in this case. I think he wanted really to see where my scoring goes. So as soon as he saw one, he dropped for first turn, but he could have waited a bit more. And I don't know if it was good or not for me to try to start this game. But basically after that, he dropped for first turn. So he put the Phoenix, the 2 Phoenixes, the Griffin guy, Bolt Thrower. Then you have the Chariot guy. You have the Archer, Alien Reaver, the Spear block with the Prince, and the 2 Chariot here. And my first idea of deployment was the following: try to use this part of the map, which is pretty weak from him to try to get a bit breathing space and counterpush, because I expected those guys to go behind the hill, go out in some position, threaten my Death Star, and those guys also to push fast. So I expected him obviously to be aggressive, but I felt I need first of all some distance with the hill. I need to use the forest to protect me. I think I was slightly more to the right, and I wanted to use this part of the map which he had pretty much nothing, to be able to push with the giant, push with the halberd, and try to create some counter pressure here and to get a safe board, basically safe board space. So that was the first idea. After my coach saw that, he told me let's take time out and figure out together what we can do. And basically the option we came up with is this one. So he told me it's a 5 on the matrix. If you deploy that way, he knows where to push, and the likelihood that I get beaten more heavily than a 5 is higher than the likelihood that I win. So we decided to basically drop in this corner with everything else, telling him you can get this 3 unit, but nothing more than that, which is 15-5. And basically it's like we gave him the hand with a 5 to 15 after this deployment, and Abrasius proposed me the 15-5, which we decided to agree because at this point of time my coach had the matrix after the pairing and felt we were in a good shape, apart from this match where he was happy to reduce the risk that we get basically a 0. So that's how we ended up. This is basically the solution, which basically is the most on one side it's the most obvious because it makes the spear block as far away as possible, and those guys that are fast still need to push around the house, which is not that easy, and I have very solid unit around, so not that simple for him to push in this corner. But on the other hand, this leaves my 3 unit here a bit alone, and he can easily get them, basically, including the flag. And then the third idea that I came up with while doing a bit more analysis, will show you everything. That's everything I drew. So basically, I discussed that with Coco, who is a very good player, try to figure out what would have been possibly the best solution to still give me a shot at something in this game, something more than possibly a 5, or I don't know. It's still a complicated matchup, but maybe the best possible deployment to try to have a chance in the game. So we felt one good option could have been, so first of all, not drop those guys at 3rd, but put the Frost Mammoth. That would have been a first idea. And after that, obviously, try to get the halberd on the left. Obviously, we play capture the flag, so you don't like to split your flags around the board, but at the same time, something that you want to avoid when you play against an opponent going to be aggressive is to be pushed in a corner. So I think you have to put some of units in the middle or weaker flank to basically divert him and force him to make choice. And we know that these 3 flyers are going to take a position here, so try to have a look behind the hill with on one side the Death Star and on the other side the halberd. First of all, is going to force him to use a chaff pretty soon, and he cannot chaff everything with that. So I think that's the first point. And after that, we want to make him make choices, like I did in my games against my KOE teammate, if we remember. There's also the idea of him coming aggressive against me, and I put the halberd on the other flank, which worked pretty well because he has choice to make. If those guys decide to push toward the Death Star, then those guys, you need to feed them. It's not going to be so easy. And if he uses the 3 flying guys to deal with the halberd guy, first of all, I have the Frosty to maybe strike before. And second of all, that would mean that the spear guy would be alone against 2 big blocks plus a giant that could push. So I think it still allows me to be aggressive around the house, which is, I think, a key zone due to me winning the map. I think that's one of the zones that I need to exploit, and due to the counter thrust first 2 drops, I think that's one part of the map that I need to take advantage of. And this keeps also my shooting Bergvets here on the right side a bit more quiet, or a bit more, how can I say, a bit more safe at the beginning, because they can move in a zone that's free forward, try to get some shots, cause some problems, and then my Death Star can at the same time look towards the hill, look at the spear guys, and then use the giant to try to get through the chariot. Obviously, the shooting first target would be the chariot, and as soon as I got the chariot, I can try to be threatening and have here a solid right flank. So the likelihood that I lose the halberd is quite high, but if he does that, it's not so easy for him to get then through my Death Star, because it's going to be very far away from each other. So it's not going to be so easy, it's going to take some time, and probably cannot get both in the game. I think you need pretty early to choose between be aggressive towards my backline. In this case, the halberd could be free to push, so he needs to find a solution against them. And for example, the BSB alone or the Griffin guy alone might not be enough. And if he doesn't do that, those guys could easily push. Then he could target them heavily with shooting. That could be an option, obviously. Try to force 8 rollable panic check, which is obviously a risk in this deployment. But that could have been an option. Obviously a more riskier one. I think here we took the safe approach that made the most sense after the pairing, because we were 13 a bad feeling about this matchup. We also trained this type of matchup between my list and shooty Highborn, very mobile Highborn, and it didn't end up well, so I think that was the right solution. But still interesting to think about the possible solution in this matchup to maybe get a bit more chance. But as you can see, as soon as you try to get that, there are going to be some risk also involved in the game, and it's still going to be a difficult matchup to win, definitely. So guys, that's all. Couple of information about the result. We still ended up winning this round 82-78. It was very close round. As you can see, we have 4-10, so 10-10-10-10. Then we have 11-9 and 2-13-7, and here we shook on 5-15. So we got only one loss, which is the one we shook on, which was predictable after pairing. And other than that, we won 3 tables slightly and 4 draws, so very close round. Ended up just in our favor, but obviously not so good for both teams, because we are going to end up below the podium, because there are some teams behind us that can score heavily, and we had a matchup that was very close, very tense, which end up really close and doesn't help any of the team. But was still a nice round against the very nice team Poland. Always a pleasure to compete against them. I think they were well deserved a fair play prize this year. Guys, that's all for this battle report, or this the talk about deployment. I think still interesting to display that and talk a bit about it. I think there wasn't any great solution to win it, to be honest. It was still a complicated matchup. It's more about how can I make the life of my opponent the most difficult, or do I make it the hardest to attack me? I think it's still quite in his favor no matter what. It's still going to be a game that is going to fancy attacking me, so it's still going to be hard. But I kind of like the last solution. Obviously it's still a bit risky, but I kind of like the fact that I make him do some choices, which was not the case with the first deployment ID, and the second one also. I mean, it's pretty obvious what he's going to do. So I think always keep that in mind when the opponent has a good matchup, or wants to try to attack you at least. Always try to think, not stay too much in a corner, try to provide or offer something else on the flank to try to make him think twice about what he wants to do. What does he send to these other flanks to manage this unit? I think that's always something to keep in mind, to avoid getting pushed in a corner and just get tabled, basically. Guys, that's all for this video. Thanks a lot for watching. Abrazus, I hope if you watch that we are going to have sometimes finally a game together, a world game, and not only a deployment. Would be nice, and a better matchup for me obviously. Would be nice to have a game against you, because yeah, it would be a really interesting challenge for me. Guys, thanks a lot for watching. Thanks Team Poland for the round, and talk to you soon for the conclusion video of ETC.